We're going to start on the floor, in fact, and we're going to come into child's pose. So you have choices here. If your legs are a little bit tight, you can put that cushion behind your bottom and sit back down on it. If you're okay to sit down, that's great. You're having your knees relatively narrow stance this morning to start with, and then we're just going to walk the fingers out a little bit wider than the shoulders, palms facing down, so the elbows stay off the ground. And ease our way in as we exhale. And we feel that nice long stretch down the side of the body, through the shoulders, maybe a little bit in the lower back as well, and obviously the hips, knees and ankles. Now the diaphragm struggles to expand and contract when we're in child's pose, so the breath is a little bit more into the ribs. Gradually your body might loosen up and your forehead comes to the ground. And then we'll let ourselves lift back up slowly. We'll come onto all fours. So we're already starting to get a little bit of feedback from the body as to how it feels, where the tight spots are. Let ourselves have a little wriggle from side to side. So just snaking the hips from one side gently to the other, letting the shoulders move as well. Getting to play with a little bit of weight through the knees and the wrists, giving the fingers a nice stretch. And then we'll come back into a little bit more lifted position. So we're starting to press away from the floor. This is our neutral position. And from here, we're going to start to draw the chest forwards and let the tailbone tuck up towards the sky and roll the shoulders back. And then we'll tilt the pelvis the opposite way, draw the belly in round the spine, let the head roll down towards the ground. Press away from the floor. Inhale, we'll come back again. And exhale, we'll go back. So we want to be careful we don't pull on the neck too much. So it feels very much like it's the spine that's moving and the head is following rather than the other way around. Now we'll take a little breath and take the ribs out to the left. Then rise them up towards the sky. So roll over towards the right and then let the ribs drop. So we're just barreling around a little bit. You feel the shoulders working a bit more on this and the wrists. Make this as big a circle out to the side as you can. And then we'll take it a couple of times in the opposite direction. Now we'll just sit back onto the heels. Take hold of the hands, interlacing the fingers. The forearms come together. Just rolling the wrists around gently. So welcome to those that have just joined. A little bit of wrist rolling. And we'll shake out the fingers. We'll come back up to all fours again. We'll make sure the wrists are underneath the shoulders and draw the chest away from the ground a little bit. We'll tuck the toes on the right foot underneath and just lengthen that leg out to the back of the mat. So a nice stretch. We want to keep the shoulders over the wrists at the time. We'll take a little breath from here. I'm going to take the left hand away from the floor and just lengthen that out in front of us. The palm faces in, hands in line with the body. Now slowly lift the right foot off the ground until it's about the height of your hip. Allow yourself to bend your knee. It's called a Superman crunch. So we're going to draw the right knee in towards the body, and the left elbow comes back towards the left hip, around the spine, and then lengthen back out again to that long position, foot pointing down towards the floor. And then we bend the knee, draw it back in. These are slow movements with the breath, so the breath is quite long. We bend the knee again, and we're just stabilizing the hips, working our core. There's just 5 of these on each side. So you might find that if you've never done this before, it's a little bit tricky, a bit wobbly, but you'll get better. As we lengthen out for the last time, bring the hands and the foot to the floor, and then we'll swap over to the second side. So the left foot goes back. You take a moment to stabilize. Again, make sure the wrists are underneath the shoulders. If they're a little bit ahead or behind, it gets even more tricky with balance. You're going to lift the leg and arm out. Allow yourself to bend the knee. Come into that little crunch around the spine. Lengthen out to a long line. Bend the knee, exhale. There is a benefit in taking these nice and slowly. Apart from the fact it gives your nervous system a little bit of a chance to adjust and catch your balance. It also works the muscles a little bit deeper as well. So one last time. Lengthen out. Bring the hands back down to the floor, feet back to the floor. We'll come into child's pose again, but we'll take the knees as wide as the mat. Toes come together. So it's the extended version. We're going to walk the hands out. We'll get even lower to the ground. Now, this version is easier to breathe in, but you will feel the difference in the hips. And start to open the groins out a little bit. So today's class is what we call a half and half. So there's some static holds and there's some flow. Just take it easy through all of the poses. If there's any sharp pains, just move yourself gently back out of the poses. And we're going to come down onto our bellies. So just lengthening the legs out. And we'll take the hands forwards, palms down. Lengthen the legs out behind, bootlaces down. And then we're going to walk the fingers over like itsy bitsy spiders over towards the right. We're going to walk them over as far as we can. So we're coming into a nice deep side bend very slowly over to the right side. You can turn the head towards the right and let it drop down to the floor. I'm not doing that on this side because I've got an earpiece in my ear. It will jam into my head. So once you've gone as far as you can, you've got this nice deep bend and stretch down the side of the body. But you never realized doing side bends could be so much fun. Just a couple more breaths. And then we'll walk across the other side. So lift the head a little bit. I'm still trying to keep the hands roughly shoulder distance apart. I'll bring myself back into the center, and then I'm going to walk all the way over to the second side. And then we get this nice deep stretch down the right side of the body. Now, there's a good chance that you've never taken a side bend whilst laying on your belly in a class ever before, but it is a really nice stretch. And we'll ease our way back into the center. I'm going to bring hands underneath, press away from the floor. Come back up onto all fours and bring your fingertips up to the front of the mat. Bring your shoulders over the wrists as you tuck your toes underneath, and we'll lift the hips up and back and move into down dog. So you can stay there. I've just got another person to let into the room. So whilst we're in the down dog position, we can choose a couple of different styles of doing down dog. So first of all, we could just bend both knees so that the thighs are more vertical. And then you can lay your chest a little closer towards your thighs. It opens the shoulders up a little bit more. And another option you've got is to just walk the feet out very gently, slowly, breathing in. And then on the exhale, you change over. Whichever position you take, you draw the belly in, allow the hips to lift up towards the sky. We're not trying to take the heels all the way to the floor. We want a little bit of a gap so that they float. And we make sure that the hands are really flat to the floor. There's no gaps underneath. So just walking it out nice and gently. And then we'll slowly come into a plank. So we just push forwards carefully. We'll roll over the toes and let the knees come down to the floor. Sit back down onto the heels. Let the head come to the ground and the elbows to the floor. On the inhale of a breath, round your spine back up to all fours. When your shoulders are over the wrists, tuck the toes underneath. Lift the knees away. Press back and then lift the hips up towards the sky. We'll come back into a plank again. Rolling over the toes, the knees come to the floor, and we sit down as we exhale. Inhale, we draw the body back up to all fours, tuck the toes underneath, lift the knees, press back, and move into that down dog. And come into the plank again. Roll over the toes, so you move forwards just a little bit as you do that. You sit down, roll it up, and lift it back into your down dog. One more time. Coming into plank, roll over the toes, let the knees down. Nice rounded spine. And then the lift. Now from this down dog position, we'll draw the right knee in towards the chest and bring the foot through between the hands so the fingertips and toes line up at the front of the mat. I'm going to drop the back knee down onto the floor, nice and gently. We want to have the knee over the ankle, so not forwards. And then we can bring the hand onto that front side to lift ourselves up slowly. So it just gives the spine, particularly this lower part of the back, a little bit of a chance to understand where we're going. The muscles to kind of cooperate. Now, once you eventually draw yourself up, your body gets even more upright. You can let the hands come down by the side of the body. Take the palms up towards the sky and see if you can bring your hands together so they touch just above your head. Now, you're going to try and keep the ribs drawn down towards your hips and the belly in a little bit. Tucking the tailbone down towards the floor. Slowly release the hands back down to the ground. And we'll step back into the down dog. So we tuck the toe on the back, lift the knee, and just step it back. We'll do the same on the opposite side. We'll draw the left knee in, bring the foot through. Now you might need to use your hand to help get your leg through to where you want it to be. That's fine. And then we use the hands again to come onto that front side to gently lift up. It should feel really nice through the spine. Lift yourself a little more vertical. Take the hands out to the side. Inhale up. Palms come together. You can lengthen the fingers up towards the sky. Now we're going to release the hands down to the floor. This time we'll step into the front of the mat. So we're going to tuck the toe on the back foot. Press out through the heel so the leg is long and strong at the back. Push off the toes. Land the feet about hip distance apart and parallel. And have quite a bit of bend in your knees so your ribs actually sit on your thighs to look after your lower back. And hold here for a couple of breaths. Just literally dangling over the hips. Fingers are still on the floor. Now you might feel that you're bending your knees a ridiculous amount. I'd just invite you to have a look at the screen and see how much of a bend I've got in my knees, because it's probably the same as yours. It's a big bend in the knees to start with. Those hamstrings, calves, they're going to be tight first thing in the morning. Some of us have got longer hamstrings than others, so they'll be a little bit more upright. But most of us, if you spend the day at a desk, get a little bit tight. Now we'll bring the hands onto the front of the shins. We'll lift up halfway and draw the body out. So the chest draws forwards, the tailbone goes back. This is when the legs can open up a little bit, and you'll certainly feel that into the lower part of your hamstrings a bit more. This time we're going to hinge over the hips, so draw the belly and exhale, fold in, and then soften the knees as you need to get those ribs and thighs to touch again. Bring the hands onto the hips, lift up, onto the shins and lift up. And exhale down. Bring hands on again to the shins, lift up. And exhale down. So we'll bring hands onto the hips this time. Draw the elbows and shoulders back. Lengthen the chest forward so the spine feels flat. Keep the bend in the knees and hinge from the hips. Drive down through the legs to lift up. And then just shake it all out. So we're going to come into something which is like a modified sun salutation. So if you've done those before in classes that you've attended, you'll understand where we're going. If not, it's all going to be a nice surprise, but it's step by step. So we'll take the hands up towards the sky, palms touch, and then as you exhale, bring the hands in towards your heart. As you're still exhaling, bend forwards and let the weight come into the toes a little bit and soften the knees as we come down to the floor. I'm going to take a little breath and step back with the right foot as far as we can. Bring the fingers to the floor and step back into that down dog. The feet are still hip distance apart and the heels are hiding behind the ankles. We're drawing the hips up high. We'll float forwards gently into the plank. Now we're going to come into half plank. And the options are that you can bring the knees to the floor and take this, or you can just take the slightly stronger version. If you're going to take the slightly stronger version, you're going to push forwards on the tiptoes, bend the elbows back and let the ribs come down. So you squeeze them in. The bootlaces change down, strong long legs, and then we lift the chest up, which is called up dog. We'll lift the hips up on an exhale and rolling gently back into that down dog. So if you needed to bring the knees to the floor, that's fine. You can have the toes untucked or tucked, whichever feels more controllable for you. We'll take another couple of breaths here. Just letting that down dog open up. So this is great for opening up the back of the hamstrings. It's not half as strong as the forward fold is for doing the same thing. We'll draw the right knee in towards the chest again. Come up onto the tiptoes as you breathe in, and then bring your right foot back through between your hands so fingers and toes line up. You press out through the back heel so that leg gets very strong. You'll feel the front of the thigh opening up a little bit as you do that. Push off the toes into the forward fold, land with the feet hip distance apart. Draw your chest and ribs together. Bring your hands onto the hips. Lengthen the chest, squeeze the shoulders back a little bit, and lift up. Then we do it again. So hands come high, hands through the heart. Exhale forwards, soften the knees. Taking the left foot back this time. Bring the hands to the floor, step back into your down dog. Come forwards into your plank. Push forwards on the tiptoes as you exhale down into that half plank. Bootlaces change, strong legs, you lengthen them away. Lift the chest, roll the shoulders back a little bit. And then slowly glide back up into that down dog, or stepping it back into the down dog, whichever works. I know for quite a few years when I first started yoga, I just didn't have the flexibility in my feet. I was amazed that the teacher could roll over their toes. It seemed completely unnatural to me. But gradually the feet open up. Again, we'll draw that left knee into the chest. We come up onto the tiptoes, it squeezes the knee in towards the body. And then on a big exhale, you bring your foot through. Be on the fingertips in the lunge, strong back leg. Take a little breath, push off the toes, and come into the forward fold. Sink ourselves down nice and low. Bring the hands onto the hips, lengthen the chest forwards, and exhale slowly on the way up. Inhale high. Bring the hands through the heart, and exhale down to the floor. Remember, the weight goes into the toes a little bit. It just softens the knees, keeps them safe. Right foot to the back of the mat. Now this time I'm going to let the back knee down to the floor. And then we're going to draw the hands back behind the line of the heel. So you're probably going to move your fingers up 12, 15 inches. I have no idea what that is in centimeters. I'm very old. And then we're going to slowly push back. So at this point, my front foot is still flat to the floor. I'm going to slowly flex the foot up towards the sky. Sit back as far as I dare. So you might even be able to get right to your bottom, right down onto your heels. Depends on body by body. You're drawing the belly in. And rather than rounding the spine, we're going to try and lift it up towards the sky. So it's sort of following that 45-degree line. It's called a half monkey pose. The monkey refers to the splits. So this is half of a split. We'll come forwards again. Bring the hands forwards with us. Tuck the toe on the back foot and step it back into that down dog. We'll come forwards into the plank. Push forwards for the half plank. Take the up dog as the bootlaces change. Roll the shoulders back, lengthen out through the legs a little bit. Roll over the toes and ease our way back into down dog. And we'll draw the right knee into the chest, come up on the tiptoes, bring the foot through, right to the front of the mat, fingers and toes line up. Push off the back toes into that forward fold. Make sure the feet are hip distance apart at the front of the mat as you land. Lengthen the spine out, lift up, bent knees. Inhale high, hands through the heart, and exhale down to the floor. So we've got the other leg to do. This time the left foot goes back, nice and deep. Bring the hands back again, like we did before. Slowly sit back, just check that we've got our balance in our fingertips, and then lift the foot slowly, or just the toes slowly away from the floor. Sit back a little further, and then come up onto the fingertips, draw the chest forwards as much as you can, draw the belly in a little bit. Think a nice, long, flat, strong back. Now, what it feels like and what it looks like, they can be very different. It's more of a feeling occupation, this. And then we'll slowly bring ourselves back, bring the hands with us, tuck the toes underneath on the back foot, lift the knee, and back into our down dog. Floating forwards, we come into plank, half plank, push forwards again, elbows into the ribs. Inhale on the way up, and exhale into our down dog. Just checking that the feet land parallel, hip distance apart, no gaps under the hands, they're flat to the floor. Hips are lifting and pressing back. Breathing long, slow, gentle breaths. And we'll come up onto the tiptoes as we draw that left knee into the chest. Bring the foot through on the exhale. And then press off the toes at the back into that forward fold. Hands come onto the hips again. And we slowly lift ourselves up. Inhale to the sky. And we finish by bringing the hands in towards the heart as we exhale. and just shake everything out. So hopefully that's sort of, warmed your body up a little bit. We're going to take the feet nice and wide apart. So we're going to come side onto the mat. We're going to take a warrior two and an extended side angle. So we'll do this to both sides. We'll take the hands out nice and wide. So we get to understand how our fingers and hands feel when they're in line with our shoulders. I'm going to turn the feet now towards the front of the mat. Take a little breath and then soften the front knee over the ankle. And look through the middle finger. So this way your chest is facing the long side of the mat. The hips are a little bit diagonal, which is what we want. We don't want them too square to the side of the mat. I want to check that this front knee is moving towards the little toes a little bit. So ideally it's sort of facing your kneecap is second, third toe in the foot, rather than falling over to the big toe. And you'll notice that I'm not leaning forward, so I'm quite upright. The pelvis here is the same distance either side from the floor. It's a neutral spine and neutral pelvis. The back foot is pressing down. So I can feel the muscles in that back leg lifting and the thigh contracting a little bit. I'm going to take this into a side angle, so I'm going to slowly lengthen now. There's an imaginary line between my sort of shoulders, my hips, and my back leg. And bring the forearm onto the front thigh and press that in gently, and lift the top arm up towards the sky. Now, if the arm starts to feel like it's getting really tired, you can actually just wrap it around and place your hand onto the back of your lower part of your spine. But if you're able to stretch it up towards the sky, that would be great. Now we'll come back up into that warrior two position. We'll float the arms overhead. This is where it gets fun. I'm going to turn the body, hips, gently towards the front of the mat, which means the back heel lifts. We're going to let ourselves lean forwards, let the arms drop down. They sort of swing past, and as they start to swing forwards, we step up to the front of the mat. Now, with a bit of luck, we land with our feet about hip distance apart and nice and parallel. If you've never done it before, that first sort of letting go of the back foot can feel kind of strange and a bit dramatic. We'll take the feet out nice and wide. We'll just face the opposite side again. Take the hands out nice and wide. Turn the toes towards the front mat, both feet. Sink into that front knee. Have a little look, peripheral vision, check that the knee is over the toes. Check the back foot is pressing down. Now you're probably going to feel this buttock at the back lift a little bit when you in fact press your back foot down to the floor. If it's gone to sleep, you've got a little bit extra left there to play with. And then we're going to slowly lengthen out again. So imaginary line. Forearm comes onto the thigh. They brace against each other a little bit. Top hand reaches up to 12 o'clock. And then we lift up out of the pelvis. So there's very little weight on this bottom arm. It's more the upper side of the body that feels like it's lifting and doing the work. And that will help draw the belly in a little bit as well, naturally. You can emphasize that with your breath. Draw it in even more. We'll come back into our warrior two. Remember, we'll lift the hands to the sky. Rotate slowly to find our balance. Lean forwards as the hands come down. Exhale. And as they slowly come forwards again, we just step into the front of the mat and give it a little shake out. So far, so good. We'll take ourselves to the opposite side again. Take the feet out nice and wide, and we'll take the arms out again. We're going to turn the toes just as we did before, so both feet are facing towards the front mat. So the front foot is very much down the center line. The back foot is sort of 45 degrees-ish. That's fine. Now this time, rather than keeping the pelvis where it is, we're going to send it a little bit towards the back of the mat, just an inch or two. And then that line starts to line up through the body and the back leg, and we're coming into triangle pose. We're going to slowly lengthen out forwards. Now, I always think of this as the donut pose, because like reaching out for a donut. And then bring the hand down onto the shin and take the top arm up towards the sky. Now, you're trying to open the chest up to the long side of the mat and keep the hips underneath you. Quite often they'll pop out to the side behind you a little bit. So you might need to think about actually pressing the pelvis forwards. And then the hand is quite high up the shin. For me, it's about halfway. That's a comfortable place. It could be higher, it could be lower. Depends on your pelvis and your spine a little bit. Now we'll soften the front knee. We'll come back up into our warrior two. Inhale, hands high. We rotate again slowly, finding our balance. Lean forwards, let the hands drop as we exhale. Inhale, step it forwards to the front of the mat. See if those legs are getting tired. You take your feet out wide again to the opposite side. Take the arms out nice and wide. Turn the feet. Send the hips towards the back that little bit. Start to lengthen out. Reach out for the donuts. Bring the hand down. Now, a couple of things on balance. If you look down towards your front foot, it's the easiest place for you to find your balance. And also you can have a look to just check that your foot is staying nice and steady on the floor. If you look to the side slowly, you'll notice that your balance starts to get a little bit trickier. If you want to rotate the head and look gently towards the sky, you'll find that that is even more demanding. So stay in the same pose, just kind of different levels of playing with it. We're trying to keep the body lifting, so we're not pressing too much into the front leg. We're actually pushing down into the floor to push away from it a little bit to protect the muscles. We'll take one more breath here. Soften the front knee. Come back up into our warrior two. Take the hands high. Rotate slowly. Lean forwards. Bring the hands down. And step it through to the front of the mat. Now hopefully those feet have landed hip distance and parallel. Adjust if not. Take the hands higher, you breathe in. And then hands into the heart. We exhale forwards again. And soften the knees, let the weight come into the toes. So the purpose of the forward fold is that we've just opened the groins out quite a lot and kind of tilted and moved the pelvis around a little bit. This just brings it back into sort of more of a normal position. You might feel a little bit stronger doing this forward fold than even the first ones that we did. We're going to take the hands to the floor and step gently back into our down dog. Now this time I'm going to ask you to bring your toes together so they touch on the center line of the mat at the back. And the heels are still away from the floor. We're going to take some hip circles. The way we're going to do this is we're going to draw the right knee in towards the chest, staying in down dog position. And then we're slowly going to take that right knee up towards the sky, keeping the heel in towards the bottom. Roll it around into a big circle, and then draw the knee in towards the chest as tight as we can, staying in down dog. And then we'll roll the knee out to the side again. And roll it round. Now this is strong on the knee or the hip that's doing the circling, but it's also strong on the opposite hip, which is doing the stabilizing. So we're just doing 5 of these, and we do them slowly. Now your circly knee circles might be a little bit square, not a problem. And then we can bring the foot down, 2 toes together, and we'll just draw the opposite knee in. Start to take that out to the side. Remember, you want to keep the foot a little bit flexed in the leg that's doing the circles. Try and keep the shoulders nice and square to the ground. So both arms are staying straight. You're not buckling into, in this case, that right elbow, which can go a little bit light, and then sort of dropping the shoulder down inadvertently. We'll come up for 2 more. And bring the foot back down to the floor. Come forwards into a plank. Bring the knees down to the ground. Sit back onto the heels. So far, so good. Okay, so we're going to need a block, and if you've got a brick, that would be great. If not, a couple of books that are thick, sort of A4 size, or a big cushion will do as well. We'll take a little breath from here, and we're going to come down to the floor and have the legs out in front. Now you want to be sort of closer to the front end than that, because we're going to lie down on our back. And we're just going to bring the heels in. And as we do, we're going to have them about hip distance apart, and just have a little look, make sure your feet are parallel, so the knees are high. And then you're going to walk your bottom in a little closer towards your heels. You use the hands behind you to lay your spine gently back down into the floor. There we go. It's as easy as that. So you got your little pile of bricks and blocks to the side. And we're going to work our way into bridge pose, but we're going to do kind of 2 flavors. Now, one of the things from a safety point of view in bridge is that you want to keep your eyes and your head pointing up towards the sky the whole time. Moving your neck around in this pose is not a really good idea. It's like a good chance of catching a nerve, and then you will definitely be feeling that for weeks or days afterwards. So we don't want to do that. The other thing is that the second type of bridge that we're going to take might not feel great in your back. And if it feels like it's pinching or there's any sudden pains, you just move your feet back in slowly from where we are. This traditional version of bridge shouldn't really create any problems. What we're going to do is take a little breath from here and allow ourselves to take the hands up towards the sky with the palms facing, and spread your fingers out. This might seem an odd way of doing bridge, but we'll get there. You're going to bring the elbows down by the side of your body so that the elbows are, the arms are touching the ribs as they come in. So there's no gaps underneath your armpits. And then we're going to start to press the back of the elbows into the floor and the shoulders down as well. We draw the belly in, tuck the tailbone away from the ground, and slowly lift the hips up towards the sky. So now we're around our bridge pose. We're going to try and lengthen the thighs towards the front of the mat and the buttocks as well. So you're pushing them away, as well as lifting up, pressing down through the feet. You're still pressing into those backs of the arms. You've got these little robot arms going on. So help open the chest a little bit. And then we're going to slowly let the body sink and roll back down, usually over a breath or 2. But it comes down very much sort of one bone at a time. And you'll probably feel that the floor seems to have disappeared a lot further away than you remember it. So you rearrange your feet if you think they've moved out. Take the hands back up towards the sky again in front of the chest. Stretch out through the fingers. As you exhale, bring those arms back down to the floor. Press the back of the arms into the floor and the shoulders. Draw the belly in, tuck the tailbone away, lift the hips slowly, draw the thighs and the buttocks forwards, try and keep the knees the same distance apart as your feet. And take a few breaths in. So it should feel like there's the same amount of effort going up through the arms as there is in the legs. Try and get it 50-50. Last breath here. Roll that spine gently back down to the floor. Okay. You can have a little wriggle through the hips. That feels good at that point. This is where our bricks and blocks are going to come in. So I'm taking my block and my brick crosswise of the mat. I'm going to lift the hips up gently and then slide the bricks and the blocks or the cushions and the books underneath. Now, as I come down, I want those blocks to be on the pelvis, not on the spine. So it's not touching my lower back, it's just on the bottom of my pelvis. Now you can let the arms come out nice and wide, so like a crucifix style. And you can take the feet out a little wider and see how that feels. Now if you've got a cushion, maybe you're only an inch or two off the ground, but you'll still get the effect of this light stretch through the spine. We're going to take the heel of the right foot and just slide that out to the corner edge of the mat and see how that feels through the spine and the hip flexors and the groin. And if you feel that that seems okay and you want to slide the other heel out, you can do. You keep the heel attached to the ground and ease it out. And at any point, if it feels like it's cramping or your body sort of kind of gets, not you, but your body gets nervous for you and tightens up. And again, you might just want to draw the feet back slowly as we came in. It takes a little time to kind of build confidence in the body, to let the muscles across the front of the belly and the hip flexors, which is sort of from the top hip bone down through the top part of the thigh, to relax. Now you could take this with more bricks and blocks if you had them available, but again, you probably want to build up in time to that. Bigger is not necessarily better. We're trying to let ourselves relax. Now, as somebody who suffers with back issues, which is why I took yoga up, I got some disc damage in there, and for me, this takes a little bit of time to settle into. My muscles remember that there's an injury and they try to protect. Okay, we're going to start to come out of this. So we'll draw the belly in towards the spine a little bit and then draw right heel in. When you feel safe, that foot is on the ground, you draw the left leg in. Draw the belly in a little deeper, bring the hands alongside your body, press the shoulders and the arms into the floor a little bit, lift the tailbone away from the ground and move your bricks, blocks or whatever you're using out to the side and roll the spine gently back down to the floor. Again, just over a breath or two. Now once you've done that, wriggle the feet into the center line and then bring them right in towards your bottom. So knees, thighs, toes, heels are all touching. We'll bring the right knee in towards the chest then and take the hands around the back of the thigh, interlacing the fingers. You're going to slowly press the right foot up towards the sky. We're going to keep the foot flexed and spread the toes a little bit. Get that leg to be as straight as we can. Now you're going to feel this around the back of your shoulders and the neck a little bit. If you felt your chin start to travel towards the back of the mat, try and draw it back in a little bit so it's more into a neutral position. Now if that feels okay in your spine, then you're going to slide your left heel out and let that leg lengthen out until it's straight. Have the toes point up towards the sky. Heel presses away. Foot points up to the ceiling. And then we'll bring both heels back in to the ground. And we'll just swap it over to the second side. So when you're ready, you lengthen out slowly. You'll notice that this feels like a big stretch in the hamstrings, even though we've done quite a lot of work on those guys. They're quite tough. And as soon as you move them in a different direction, even though it's the same muscle, it kind of goes, not sure I want to do that. So really straighten the heel out by pressing up towards the sky and then slowly lengthen the right leg out. So we want to mention that we're pressing out through the heels and not pressing the knees down. We want to avoid jamming into the joints. You're just trying to get the legs to be long. And then we'll release and bring both knees back in. Okay, so we'll take the arms out nice and wide, have the feet in close to the body. We're going to take a little spinal twist. So we're going to let the legs roll over to the right and the head to the left, keeping the shoulders on the ground. Now the knees may or may not come to the floor. They may or may not stay together. Not a problem. We're just trying to get some relaxation into the body here by stretching it out gently. There's different types of stretching that we can do. This one we just happen to be doing on trying to get the body to feel a little bit more chilled out. We'll slowly draw the knees back to the center. You can wriggle to realign the spine if you need to, and then taking the legs over to the opposite side. And we'll bring ourselves back into the center again. Now I'm going to take my flat block again and place it underneath the back of my head, just because I find this a little bit easier in the next couple of poses. So that could be a cushion, could be a block, could be a rolled up blanket, or as you need. I'm going to slowly draw the knees in towards the chest and let the knees float out nice and wide, but keeping the big toes touching. I can draw my chin in towards my chest so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to roll my hands down the inside of my thighs and fingers down the shins, around the outside edge of my feet. So I'm holding around the little toe side, hands are over the top, arms are on the inside of the thighs. I'll lay the head back down to the floor so I've got a nice long neck. Try and keep my tailbone as close to the ground as I can. And then we're going to come into happy baby. So I'm just going to slowly rise the soles of the feet up towards the sky, keeping that more or less 90-degree bend in the knees. And try and relax. Now we are trying to let the lower back rest down on the floor. Again, some people's hips, they've got open sockets, so they've got a high degree of mobility. This will be very easy, and their spine will be pretty much on the floor, and they'll be wondering what I'm talking about. If you've got deeper sockets, this is more of a challenge for the hip, and we need to relax the muscles as much as we can, and then try to place, so you're just pushing your tailbone down to the floor a little bit. There's like a little bit of a muscular contraction to draw the tailbone away. Now, if you've got the majority of your pelvis on the floor, then you can move into this next stage. Otherwise, you're going to stay here just working on this. And if your hands get tired, just move your hands to around your shins and ankles, staying in the pose. If you feel good to go, then we're going to slowly release the right foot to the floor. And we're going to try and place the foot close to your bottom onto the center line of the mat. You're going to slide the heel out down the mat and then take the right hand and place it on top of that right thigh and lengthen the leg out like we did before. So the foot is pointing towards the sky. We're trying to stretch the toes out and we lengthen out through the heel. This is called half happy baby. Now you would think that half happy baby would be easier, but in my body it feels like it's gone up about 100% in terms of effort. Now we'll draw the heel along the floor and back in. Bring the knee back in. We'll come back into the full version of happy baby. We'll lay the spine down onto the floor again. And we're going to release the other foot. So remember, it's close into the bottom and on the center line. Then slide the heel along the floor to lengthen the leg out gently. You'll feel that work through your front hip flexor. which is probably just about where your left hand is pressing down on your thigh. And we'll slowly bring that leg back in. We're going to release both feet to the floor. Have the feet close into your bottom. Have the knees come together, but wiggle the feet out as wide as the mat. So your legs look like a little bit of a teepee as you're looking down towards them. We'll take the hands out wide again as we breathe in. And we'll let the legs roll over towards the right. So they're scissoring. The feet just roll onto their side edge. They kind of stay in the same position on the mat, but they just roll over onto their edge. Now, generally, this right leg thigh will get very close to the floor, and the top leg will be floating around in the air somewhere. You can turn the head again. I'm trying to keep the shoulders on the ground. And then we can ease the legs back up to the center, rearrange them again if we need to, and then let them float over to the second side. I'm going to take my right hand, bring that onto my chest, slide it across my chest, and down my left hand, turn my body in until I'm onto the side of my body, and then I can use the hands to just press into the floor to gracefully lift back up. I'm going to sit on the block again, just taking the legs out in front, and I'm going to take a seated spiral twist. I'm going to draw the left foot underneath, so the heel is out towards the hip, and the left knee is pointing forwards, and the leg is on the floor. Right foot comes across, and I'm going to use my hand to just draw it in a little bit closer. I'm trying to get the foot flat to the floor, the knee points up towards the sky, and both sitting bones feel like they're attached to the block or the floor, whatever you're sitting on. I'm going to tilt the pelvis forwards a little bit, and as I do that, the spine kind of lifts up, gets a little bit more alert. I'll take the left hand up towards the sky, roll it across over to the right side. Now I'm going to brace the arm and the leg together a little bit, and take the other hand just behind the hip, and look over the rear shoulder if it's easy on the neck. On the inhale, you're going to feel the body hopefully lift a little bit and get light. And then on the exhale, you might find that, strangely enough, you can rotate a little bit more. So just go through this minor little change that happens with your breath. So see how smooth and even you can breathe. And then we'll release. We'll take this over to the second side. Again, take that little bit of time to set the legs up. Remember to tilt the pelvis forward just that little bit so you get a little bit extra lift in the spine. Right arm comes up, rotate round, leg and arm work together, ease into the twist. I hear a little creaking pop in the back. And that's just where the spine is starting to gap a little bit. And then we can release. Now we're going to come back down to the floor finally for something called Shavasana. So if your room is a little bit chilly, you might want to grab an extra layer to put on. We're going to start with the feet about a little wider than hip distance apart, hands behind. You can use your belly and your arms to roll yourself down. And take the hands out alongside the body, palms face up. Let the shoulders roll underneath a little bit. Slide one heel at a time out to the corner edges of the mat. Wriggle out the hips and get them nice and long. Soften the jaw a little bit as you close your eyes. Have a little wriggle to feel like everything's settled down nicely. And then as you exhale, let yourself sink into the mat. And just breathe. Now begin to wriggle fingers and toes. Let the wrists and the ankles start to rotate a little bit. Breathe a little deeper. And then when you're ready, you take a nice big stretch. Whatever feels instinctive to do. And then we'll slowly draw a heel at a time in towards the body so that we can take a final little hug, or you can rock from side to side on the spine. You can maybe make some circles with the knees in the air, whatever feels good. Now on the next exhalation, we'll roll gently onto our right side and just tuck ourselves into a little ball. Breathe a couple of breaths down here. Relax into the floor. Take a breath in. Begin to use the hands that press down to lift up slowly. So looking after the spine, staying nice and peaceful. Come into a pose that's easy to sit in and lengthen the spine up a little bit. Get used to your eyes being open again. You bring your hands into your heart, taking a breath in. And on the exhale, let the chin drop. Let the belly draw in, and a simple bow down to the floor to seal your practice for the morning. On the inhale, let the spine build with your breath. until it feels easy for the head to lift as well and the eyes open again. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a wonderful day.